We are going to go ahead and get started and call our meeting to order at 6:09 p.m. Thank you for joining us this evening. Dr. Thomas, if you would do roll call for us.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis.
Here.
Ms. Gallagher. Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Dr. Yeager.
Here.
Dr. Dykeman. Dr. Anderson. Dr. Gant.
Here.
Attorney Hull.
Here.
And Dr. Maddox.
Here.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. We will move forward with item 3. And as you notice tonight, we have sort of two different agendas, but it's just for, just so that we can sort of take action on some things and separate them from our work session. We will move to item 3 here, and that is to amend or adopt the agenda.
So moved to adopt the agenda as written.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Dr. Yeager and a second by Dr. Maddox. Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor of adopting the agenda before us, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, we'll move forward with the remaining items on this agenda, primarily, Dr. Thomas, the action to approve the request to consolidate the early Head Start, and then the action to approve the bond resolution. So we'll start with item 4.
Yes, ma'am. So the first is the action to approve the request to consolidate early Head Start and Head Start continuation and early Head Start expansion grants. You all did receive that information. Mrs. Higginbotham is here if you have questions, but it just allows her to get all of the grant programs on one timeline and to unify reporting and those types of items. But we did need that approved for her to move forward, excuse me, with that application.
I move that we approve the request to consolidate the grants.
Second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion by Dr. Yeager, a second by Ms. Davis. Follow-up questions or comments, Dr. Yeager or Ms. Davis?
Very clear. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions, board colleagues? Okay, all in favor of approving the request to consolidate the early Head Start and Head Start continuation and early Head Start expansion grants? If you would, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We'll move forward to item 5, and this is our action to approve the bond resolution. Dr. Thomas and Mr. Pruitt.
Yes, and so we have Mr. Pruitt here. Would you like to speak on this, Mr. Pruitt?
Actually have Jim Woodward and Kate Haygood, our bond counsel, here to speak, as well as Todd Barnes, our underwriter, so I'll just turn it over to them.
Thank you.
There we go. All right, is that better? Okay. In spite of a challenging market, there was really good demand for your bonds, the size of the bonds, your strong credit ratings, the fact that they're only 5-year bonds, that part of the market, there's a lot of demand. As you know, interest rates are rising. People are kind of staying away from longer term, but shorter term debt they like. So you were selling $75 million in bonds, and we actually had orders for about $370 million. So that enabled us to lower the yields even further. So all the bonds were sold at an overall rate of about 2.56%. And we're going to put about, at closing, just shy of $79 million into the project fund. And we'll be working with staff after closing to on an investment plan as well to maximize your interest earnings on that money while it's in the construction period, to provide even more dollars for the projects. So that really, and again, we'll, with your approval tonight, moving forward, scheduled to have that closing and delivery of the funds on May the 19th. So that's the quick summary and recap. Happy to answer any questions, but delighted that it went so well today.
So I have a quick question, simply because I never asked one about this.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say that there was a capacity for over 300 million?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that I heard that correctly.
High demand for these bonds.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
you're welcome. Jim?
Hey, again, Jim Woodward, Great Pin on Woodward. I'm right next door. You remember me? I'm the blue
Yeah.
house right next door. So I really appreciate the opportunity to work on this transaction. But this is the last step of the transaction. We started this over a year ago with the referendum resolution being the first step, and then of course the referendum itself in November, and then we voted on something in February. But this is the last formal action to approve the bonds, and all we need for you is a motion to approve the bond resolution as presented. And that will basically lock in these rates today, and that'll be the final step. And then, of course, we'll be closing on May 19th, and the funds will be in place, and you can start building your projects. But this is just the final step. There will be one more step. There's a tax levy resolution that the United Government, Athens Clarke County will approve. And that's scheduled to be approved on the 10th. Much like your tax levy resolutions for your M&O tax, they have to do one for your property tax as well. Even though this will be paying for sales tax, but that'll be one more action that's all lined up with them to occur on the 10th or the 17th. But we've already talked with them. But with that, that's all we need. Unless you have any questions, again, it'll just be a motion to approve the bond resolution as presented.
Thank you. I have one probably dumb question. The 75 million is mentioned multiple times in this document, but then twice there's 175 million mentioned. That's the upper limit of what we are allowed to raise
That's
based
how
on...
much sales tax will be coming in. And so these are sales tax bonds. And so as sales tax comes in to the school district over the next 5 years, that'll be put into a special account and used to pay debt service first. And then to extend every year, there's excess. It'll be used for other projects. But your cap for sales tax collections is 175 million, and you'll be borrowing 75 million. And so you'll have roughly 100 million left to pay for other projects outside your bonds.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Tish.
Just making sure it wasn't a typo.
That's a sales tax.
My grad students put extra ones in things all the time.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Any additional questions?
I think
And if I may, I was just going to add that there actually will be a few more documents for Dr. Gant, Dr. Thomas to sign at the closing on the 19th or after the closing, and this resolution also authorizes them to sign those.
Right. Yeah. So we'll have closing documents. Yeah, tonight we'll sign the bond resolution, and there'll be a bond, and that includes approving a bond purchase agreement, which basically sells the bond to Raymond James, Todd Barnes Group, and that will basically allow them to lock all these rates tonight, and then again we'll close on the 19th. But in connection with any closing, being a lawyer, we had a lot more documents to sign, and so there'll be a few more closing certificates and things like that. They'll be signed, but we will get those signed at y'all's convenience and in advance of closing.
great, thank you. All good.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
The floor is open for a motion.
I move that we make a motion to approve the bond resolution as presented.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hull, a second by Ms. Davis, Mrs. Hull and Ms. Davis. Just any follow-up comments or questions? Okay, all in favor of approving the bond resolution, if you would, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. And so that brings us to adjournment for this particular special call meeting to take action on those items. And so the floor is open for adjournment of this particular part of our program.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All right, Ms. Davis made a motion and Ms. Hull second. Seeing that there are no objections, we will adjourn the call meeting at 6:19 p.m. And let's take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll start our regular work session meeting, okay? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Actually, we're going to resume at 6:30, okay? That's just 5 extra minutes. Thanks.
Okay.
Just the last page?
All right. There's that.
Thank you.
Now this is, that's it?
Those are
Okay.
my cheat sheets.
All right, that's it.
I need to order some stamp one. Is that one ready? She signed this one. No, yes.
Oh.
Oh, I can keep that one?
Just for the minute book.
right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Testing. You can, I don't think so. Test, test. Yes, sir. Do you have any issues at yours? Does it connect right up? Yes, mine, that one connects right. Okay. I just wasn't sure how, like, where to go. Yeah.
Do you mind if I close this and hand it back to you so it's in there?
Oh, no, that's fine. Oh, and so I just log in like naturally now?
You
I
don't
can
have
use
to
it?
sign back in.
Oh, I don't
Only
ever?
when you change your password is when you kick you out.
Okay.
So it'll just have you put in a new one.
Well, but it gave me, I have 3 days, I think, because it's
Great. So
days
you're
or
connected,
something.
secured, you're good to go.
Thank you.
If y'all need anything, just wave me down.
Okay, okay, thank you, Alex. Thank you. Testing. Alex, my microphone is like gone down. All right, thank you for your patience with us. We are going to now begin our regular work session meeting. Dr. Thomas, if you would call this meeting to order.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis? Here. Ms. Gallagher? Here. Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Dr. Yeager?
Here.
Dr. Dykeman? Dr. Anderson? Dr. Gant? Attorney
Here.
Hall?
Here.
And and Dr. Maddox.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a quorum. We're going to move forward with item 2, and that is to amend or adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. Davis made a motion and Ms. Hull the second. Any follow-up questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor of adopting the agenda before us, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We will move forward with item 3. These are our informational items. And so I'm going to, we have our Early Head Start, Athens Community Career Academy, and SPLOS monthly report. So I'm going to open up the floor for any questions or further discussions around these items. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I've got one question for Karen, if I could. It's dealing with the attendance for Head Start and Early Head Start month by month. And, I saw that it's pretty much functioning at 80% during the year. And then, and so that was kind of my question, is that a typical year, or there's some extenuating circumstances? And then there was a dip in Head Start from 85 to 79, and just kind of like what can we do to work on attendance, or is that something that needs to be addressed? Like we're talking about other K-12 attendance as well.
Our attendance tends to be tied more to students being sick or ill, partly due to their age and the fact that they're typically haven't come in contact with a number, and we've had COVID still at the beginning of this school year. We have not had any cases since Christmas time, but we have had the flu and other things that typically run through. And we typically would run our attendance closer to 85%. But it is something that we're always watching for, and there are not students who tend to lay out of school unless they're ill or if there's some type of transportation issue for parents, and we work with parents if that's the case. Thank you.
I had some questions, but there was a lot of questions, and so I emailed them, and I'll just wait for a response. Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions around early Head Start? Okay. Athens Community Career Academy or SPLOST? Mr. Davis?
Yeah, this one is for the Career Academy, and I know that Ms. Davis had a number of questions. I just have one, and that is on the work-based learning. I thought at one time that we had more than 100. This one shows that we have 100 applicants for the next school year. I was wondering how many participants in the work-based learning we have now, currently this school year. You know, if there's any.
I can find that out and get that information to you, Mr. Davis.
Okay.
So you want to know how many are currently enrolled in work-based learning?
Yes, and just, you know, kind of keep, it's just kind of a small program of ours, but I think it's really important. And so just to look at the broad sweep of it, if we are taking full advantage of you know, of the business community as well as county government, and who knows, maybe even the university. So I'm just a strong supporter of work-based learning, and I think 100 applicants are great, but if we had 200, it'd be better, I think.
Okay, I will follow up and get that information.
I too have a lot of questions. Again, not necessarily, first of all, I love the Career Academy. I'm 100% supportive of the Career Academy. I love the expansion that it's doing. I just have questions in terms of governance and responsibilities of the board versus responsibilities of the now required board for the Career Academy itself, and whether that as a program is still within the autonomy of the district to discontinue that, to turn it into something else, or just, again, how do we work together to make that greatly successful? And so I think I articulated all of them, at least the ones that popped into my head as I was reading that report. So I'm looking forward to a conversation about that.
Yes, we started responding to those questions today, and we should be able to get that to you next week.
Thank you so much. What was the third thing?
The monthly report.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, I've been under the weather for a little bit, but I'm up now, and so I read a lot of things, and I have a lot of questions. And again, I think that in fairness to you, I just sent those this morning, and so I won't ask for an answer now. I will wait and get a response later.
All right, thank you. So we'll move forward to our board community reports. This is item 4, the Community Oversight Committee, or SPLOST report.
So I was able to attend this meeting, or at least most of it. I think I missed the first 10 minutes, but.
Dr. Yeager, can you speak a little bit
Sure,
louder and
sorry.
clear?
I have a mask because I might have been exposed, but I will keep my breath. Yeah, I was at the meeting, so if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So I think a lot of my questions, again, the same thing on SPLOST. We no longer have a property committee, and so a lot of things are happening in that arena that I don't feel that we have I don't have enough information on to make any reasonable decisions about. And so I think I articulated the questions that I have, and there may be something that administration answers. There might be some questions for the board itself to answer too. But I won't ask anybody to respond to something that you got in less than 24 hours. So I will wait for answers on those as well.
And I said this between us, but just to say that I think you'd be welcome at the COC meeting this coming Tuesday at 8:30, if you could make it, Ms. Davis.
I will totally do my best to be there since I'm on break for a couple of weeks.
Madam President, I did not submit a report for Envision Athens, as I just had a conversation with the executive director today, but if it's appropriate, I can get the board a brief update on the request to present.
For Envision Athens under the board community reports. Yeah, if you can give us like a brief.
It'll be a one-liner. I spoke with Sally Shepherd today. She's very interested in presenting a presentation to the board on kind of what the funding has been utilized for. She's just wanting dates that will be most appropriate for her to present, whether it will be at a work session or a business session. And as soon as we can get those to her, she will put it on the calendar so she can come and present.
Okay, thank you. We made note of that. And then if you don't mind, Ms. Hall, if you would put that just sort of like update in writing, and that way, you may see here, like we're sort of trying some things with the agenda. And one of the things that we've thought about from our other training is like if we don't have a written report, then we won't list it here. But definitely with Envision Athens and any of the other ones, if you have any, it doesn't have to be like a full report. It can be 2 sentences. And that way we can just upload it to, get it uploaded to Assembly, and it'll be there.
I'll send it to Lisa now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then in our agenda setting meeting, we can reach out to figure out when might be an appropriate time for the board. All right, we will move forward with our advisory board reports, and I don't have anything under, we have something as a board, but I don't have any individual report as far as the board president's report. We'll, I guess, update that as needed. And so we're still figuring out retreat. I think that was the main thing, the date for the retreat and things like that. But, like we're asking board colleagues to do, we'll write that up once we have something to report about the retreat and the dates. So we do have, the other thing that we do have under the board president's report is the board member review of the code of ethics and the conflict of interest. And so we did want to create some time, because remember over the past several years there were questions around if we were doing it, and then we were doing it, but we didn't know that we were doing it because it was sort of just an action item that we didn't really spend a lot of time around. And so Ms. Palmer and Dr. Thomas have been really helpful in remembering that it does need to go on the agenda for us to spend some time talking about it. And so that's where we are with this item. And so really the floor is open. It does result in us signing something, sort of attesting to that we've reviewed our code of ethics and our conflict of interest. And so, yeah, this is a time to talk about that. If there are any questions or any comments about the code, this is the time to have that discussion. So the floor is open.
Oh, I hate to see you look like that. So certainly I enjoyed reading that code of ethics, as I read frequently, because I continue to, in my own personal life, have to adjust and make decisions. But I think that it was timely to share that. I don't know that if this is the best forum to have conversations about it, but it seems like it's very straightforward. I still don't have any questions about what it says. I understand it, certainly. I have some gray areas that I think I'd like to explore, but I don't know quite yet how do you separate, well, I definitely know how to separate myself as a board member from my personal involvement in organizations and activities. But a lot of those result from being pulled because I'm on the board. And so I'm always very clear with people that I'm only speaking for myself and on behalf of myself. So I think it's difficult from time to time to separate those two things, especially when you're all trying to get to the same answer around helping kids. But I'm glad that we have that direction to kind of lead us in the right way. So if anybody finds my interpretation off, I invite you to please let me know so that I can take an opportunity to correct that.
Thank you. Additional perspectives and thoughts? Yeah.
I guess
Dr.
the
Yeager?
one that resonates with me is, and that it seems like it's the biggest challenge, is the number one of domain one, which is recognizing that our authority rests as a whole and not with individual board members, and act accordingly. And figuring out that balance is always challenging, seems to me, especially when we come representing voices in our communities and families that we talk to, and how we translate or transmit that involvement with outside groups to the board, and not be an activist, but be a member of a team. And I find that challenging, and I sort of, especially coming back from being at sea for a few months, really trying to find that balance. So I appreciate everyone letting me know if I don't pull that off as well as I'd like to.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager and Ms. Davis. Yeah, I think it's definitely it's just a work in progress, really, because it's, when you're trying to operate as a whole, that you're used to operating. I mean, there's, of course, like benefits from operating individually and in our own other respective roles. It can be challenging, like, to move as a unit and to be able to understand that really the power is in the whole of the board versus, like, one person. So, Ms. Hall?
So there's no secret that I really love policy, and I love when the board gets involved with policy. So I would just like to say that domain 4, number 1, where we work to establish effective policies, not just review and approve, but to establish. I love that word there, and I just want that to be on the record for everyone.
Good, thank you. Yeah, and I think we're still learning as we go, as it relates to, like, collaboratively, ideally policy should be, the end result, I think, is more of this collaborative product. And so I think all of them are intertwined, because even that requires working together as a whole, and as a unit. And so thank you for that discussion. But other discussions, any particular areas additional areas? I know, Ms. Davis, you mentioned, like, there are, some areas that we need to focus on as far as, like, professional development.
I totally, we made a decision however long ago to be a charter district, right? And so we are a charter district now. And so when something shows up that doesn't seem to fit what I understood a charter district to be and its responsibilities to be, then I'm looking for an easier way to get into how did we get to this place, and how do we move from this place, and how do we make sure that we're still in alignment. So that's, I see some opportunities for policy there. I see some opportunities for procedure there. So that's one concern that I have. And then when we have, like, and I'll use the Career Academy as an example, that started out as a school, right? And then the children didn't want it to be a school. I thought the board took a vote to make it a program about 2 years ago.
Career Academy has always been a program.
Okay, somehow I had it in my head that it was a school.
No, isn't that right, Mr. Harris? Dr. Duckett? Yep, it's been a program.
Always
wasn't
and
changed.
forever. Wow, okay. Then that's different. I know at one time it was gonna be a school, and then the kids didn't
There
want
was
to give up
conversation,
their.
I think you're thinking about Classic City. There was conversation about Classic
and this
City
is-
about 2 years ago,
Yeah, this
where
is
we
prior
wanted to change
Classic
it to a
City.
program from a school, and the decision was made not to. But Career Academy has always been a program.
Okay, I'll take a look at that, because again, I distinctly remember when Classic City came up, that was again where we started with, anyway. So at this point, again, we have different boards governing things, right? And so I don't understand how this board continues to exercise its fiduciary responsibilities over the autonomy that's being generated by some of the other independent boards. And then as I look at what's happening with the next thing that we'll be talking about, and when you get into the strategic plan with the community schools, I don't know where that concept came from and how that became a part of our direction, or is it our strategic direction that we're going in with that? And then how does the governance of those unique places work out as well? So that's the gist of my discomfort in understanding, where our board role continues and where it stops, and how do we get notified of that so that it doesn't just show up on an agenda?
Are there specific areas as it relates to the code of ethics that you feel like it has implications for?
I would need some other eyes to look at that, and so that's why it took so much time to write those things down, and so hopefully we will get that review. I didn't send them to our attorney. He might be the best person to spot that, but yeah.
All right.
I will send them to you. Thanks.
Mr. Davis?
I think I can piggyback on that, at least one piece of what I heard Ms. Davis say. Under Domain 3, seek regular and systematic communication among the board and students, staff, and the community. It would seem like to me that the LSGTs should be specifically listed in that, under that domain, and that some type of process be developed, and we've talked about it for years, but that there would be a process by which board members would have that regular and systematic communication with the LSGTs. And I think in terms of a broader sense, I think that this board has made stabs at having regular and systematic communication with the community. I know we had, we used to have in policy that we would meet with the community as a board, not just as individuals, but as a board, we would do that twice a year. We also had in policy that we would meet with the county commission twice a year. And we also had in policy, of course, that we would meet with our legislators. And we eliminated that policy. So right now, all we have is, again, it's very important, but this board and community relations, Domain 3, that I think that we make the assumption that we are getting that communication without having it structured. And I think we're getting individual inputs, but I don't think we're getting board inputs in the way that this is asking for.
Thank you for that feedback and those thoughts. Definitely something to to think about as far as, what this actually looks like in practice, as a collective board, and if there be any, changes or activities or actions that the board as a whole wants to take or thinks we should take.
I'd like for us to, as an action from this conversation, address our communications path, as you said, in the absence of committees. I don't think we've had that discussion as a board yet, and maybe it's a retreat item or a work session item where we literally sit down and understand how is it that we get the information that we need in order to function as a board. And again, because I was so accustomed to that committee structure since I've been on the board, I'm really feeling an absence of that filter to help us. Again, not everybody try and be expert on everything or be in communication with every department, but to kind of divide the role of governance up and have some specific people that are focusing on specific things. So if it's not a committee, there may be something else, but I'm anxious for us to get to that place, because I feel like even looking at our current policies, I have no assurance that we're even following our policies anymore. So we said we would do it, I just haven't seen it on the calendar yet.
Mm-hmm.
And if everybody else is comfortable, that's fine. Like I said, this is me coming outside of my comfort zone and into a place where it's a lot to keep up with for one person.
I don't have anything new to add, but I do agree with Mr. Davis about in terms of the communication and having a space, having it actually intentionally included, you know, in terms of the communication with our governance teams. Actually, also the absence of the other areas of communication with the community 2 times a year, communication with, we did do with our legislators this year, and also with our commissioners. But definitely be intentional about the communicating at least 2 times a year with our community and having a place for our governance teams.
Okay. Thank you all. Any additional feedback before we move forward from the Code of Ethics? I think what I hear us saying is that there is definitely interest in, sort of carving out and like growing in this new area of policy. I know, like and that is also related to not, we don't have a policy committee, but even when we did have one, just sort of trying to figure out our role in like the establishment and the collaboration of policy, and that there may be some work to be done as it relates to the community. The Domain 3, I think it was, the Domain 3, the board and community relations. And so there may be some, maybe some opportunities there even that we could probably execute relatively quickly as far as like the community is concerned and the board meeting with the community. And then just more talks about, where we go. And that may be something, if somebody could make a note for our retreat to like at least have on the agenda, almost like, an update of how we feel we're doing without the committees. What do we think, if anything, that we need to do differently? I think there's some overlap because it also overlaps with how we operate as a unit, right? When we had committees, it was much easier to operate, but though they were committees, and so we operated within those committees, and so there are these areas of growth, figuring out how do we now get the same information and do the same work as a team of 9. And so it could be useful to have that conversation, and if there are any like concrete steps we need to take as a board. Since we will hopefully have that summer retreat coming up, we can look at that and maybe even, if there's some consensus with the board, and it seems like there is, looking to schedule a community, event or meeting where it's the board and the community to receive some feedback and to interact. And so I think that's what I hear from you all.
And Dr. Gant, is it possible that we could follow these for, to be intentional about adding, the areas that were discussed, just work through our policy process and, either Mr. Davis or myself, submit those specific areas
That's
of
right.
communication and then go through this process and make the change that way.
Yeah, so definitely, like particularly, if we discuss it more, we may not discuss it more. Just sort of depends on what the board wants when we send out that agenda. But if there are policy implications, if the board says, hey, we want to have a meeting with the community and we want to invite LSGTs, we want to invite all stakeholders, but we also think this needs to be in policy, then certainly we would encourage us to start that policy process. And it's still new for all of us, but yeah, we would invite those board members to share that request with board, and then also, with the super and Dr. Harris. I keep wanting to call him Dr. Lawrence, Dr. Harris, and it starts that process. And it may be something that's a both and, right? That we certainly can still, it's in our code of ethics, so we certainly can have a community gathering while we figure out the policy implications as well. So I don't know that we're limited in not being able to do that if that's something that the board wants to do. All right, thank you so much. Any other feedback, thoughts? Okay, we'll move forward to the superintendent's report.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Gann. I have a few items, but I can move through them relatively quickly. Just an update that we did have a meeting with the Oglethorpe Avenue community. I just wanted to provide that update publicly because I know you all have received input at board meetings regarding that. The investigations regarding the 3 complaints have been completed. Updates have been given to all the individuals who submitted those complaints, and the related investigation results have been shared with the Oglethorpe Avenue community. I met with them via Zoom last week, shared the findings and the recommendations, and also shared that Ms. Angela Jackson would begin working with that team with Dr. Singh next school year. So we had like 4 or 5 follow-up questions from that presentation. We have responded back to those individuals, and so I think hopefully we're on a path to begin moving forward. We'll continue to address some issues that we're receiving. Mr. Gaskins and Dr. Worthy and I are meeting tomorrow just to make sure we have a strong plan of support for that school moving forward. But I did want to give that update. Also have been in conversations with Mr. Blaine Williams and Mayor Gertz and some community organizations around community violence and increased gang activity, and some things that we can do collectively, maybe ways we can pool our funds together to start really addressing some of those needs in the community, as well as looking at some work, partnering with the Boys and Girls Club on expanding their services to do more for that middle to high school age student. I think that we are reaching elementary students, but we really need to connect more with our middle and high school students. So those are some partnerships we're engaging in. I wanted to remind the board that we have upcoming budget hearings, and we are required to have a quorum at all of those meetings. So Ms. Palmer has sent out invites, so if you don't mind responding to let her know, I think one is May 19th from